Why does someone want to be your friend? Why does someone have a conversation with you? Even why does someone want to work with you after a one-on-one discovery call? It's probably not because of the perfect hairdo. And it's probably because of something in your personality. And if you can figure out what that is and get that to translate in your content, that's going to be like your magic sauce. So I don't think me and Michelle aren't saying go make funny skit videos. Welcome to the Her First podcast, a platform to help online business owners, coaches, and creators gain the confidence needed to build a successful business while creating a sustainable lifestyle balance. We are here to help you prioritize yourself in business and life. I'm Joanna Newton.
And I'm Michelle Puolani. In this podcast, along with the Her First Collective, you can engage in the challenges women face in business, ways to increase your impact or income online, and how to make it all work while launching, scaling, or maintaining. Spoiler, it's not about perfectionism, hustling, or a copy-paste methodology. Let's dive in. Self-proclaimed the best marketing strategy ever. Our discussion today is about Nicole the intern, who we are following on social media with rapt attention. Very interestingly, over the past 7 weeks, she's been able to garner 520,000 followers on Instagram because of a mission that she has put forth. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the background information on what we're talking about today, and then we're going to get into the tactics of why this is working, what's the appeal, how she's using certain marketing tactics to get people on board, to gain the followers, to boost brand sales for the company that she's working for, and what you can then use and leverage in your own brand. We'll also talk a little bit about how some of the things that she's doing might be good, might be not so good. And let's just start with the basics. So we're talking about the Instagram handle, which is now the best marketing strategy ever. It used to just be Nicole the intern, which is how it started. It is this girl, Nicole. She is an intern for a company and brand called Mixology. Now, Mixology is a non-alcoholic mocktail or canned beverage drink that you can get that doesn't have alcohol, but kind of appeals to the adult market and segment in that way, which is kind of interesting, actually, as a side note with To Be Honest Beverage Company. I also see it from that perspective of the non-alcoholic brand and physical product side. So her boss, Mike, is a huge part of this story. And a little bit of the background is simply that when she got started, she basically said that her smashing of cans would gain more followers, make more sales, and improve the brand awareness of Mixology than anything that the marketing team, the current account, and fancy strategies ever could. Basically, it's been a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of back and forth between Nicole, the intern, and Mike, the boss, and she's done it. So ultimately, the goal was to reach 500,000 followers by June 10th of 2024. At the time of this recording, it is June 5th, and she's already gone over her goal and exceeded that. And now she's set another goal to quote unquote become C-suite. Don't know if that'll actually happen, but in any case, the bet was essentially that if she reached 500,000 followers, she would get promoted or get an official position with the company. And if not, she would get fired. So let's go ahead and dive into the tactics, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that we're seeing as we kind of move through this conversation. Firstly, one of the things that Nicole has been able to do so well is ultimately create a movement. There are millions of brands on the market. There are a lot of canned products. There are a lot of beverages, along with likely whatever you are doing as a coach, creator, brand, or business. There's a lot of competition out there. So it's important to acknowledge that that exists. What you're trying to do is kind of stand out. And as a company, one way that you can do that is create a movement. Anchor it in your mission and what it is that you're working toward, the vision that you have, and get people on board with whatever that movement is. And what she's essentially done is created a social movement. We'll talk about some of the points and how she does this, but ultimately she calls her group the Smash Army, and she honors the people by speaking to this mass group that is following her, that's cheering her on, that supports her, and is helping her reach this goal. But ultimately, she's created something of what I'm going to call a movement that people are able to get on board with and affiliate themselves with, and then also cheer on and support over.
Yeah, we've talked about in previous episodes how attention is currency, right? Getting attention, having people, having an audience, and what that looks like. And I think logistically, sometimes you think about that audience's follower count or an email list or something like that. But that follower account or that email list represents something, right? It represents a community. And if you can figure out how to create a community, like, you're going to be able to do something with that audience. Now, can she sell the beverage? That's another thing. Should be something we talk about in this episode, like how that actually affects sales. And is this effective, like, strategy for increasing sales? Because increasing followers and increasing sales are not necessarily the same thing. But when you're able to create a community, it just is a huge benefit for your brand. And I often find, not that people are simple, but when you name something, it, like, really, really does something. And this is a total sidetrack moment for a second. But, like, if you work in the corporate world, like, one tactic I used to build my, like, brand equity for myself was naming projects. So if I'm working on a project, like, I consistently call it the same little nomenclature, right? And when you name something, it makes everyone think it's so much more valuable. So by her naming her people, this is the Smash Army, I think you said, like, she's put that label on them. Even when if she named them and there were only 10 people when that name happened, then when new people come, they're like, "Ooh, I'm joining the Smash Army. I'm gonna be part of the Smash Army." And you just kind of create that language that brings a community together and makes it something people want to join and be a part of.
Yeah, it's actually called the bandwagon effect, right? So when people are doing something that you want to be a part of, you want to jump on board. You want to join the bandwagon. And so by creating the community, by gathering a group of people together with a clear mission, a clear intention, and again, getting them to support you and come behind you. And then, like you said, naming is very important to identify someone as either a part of or not a part of. You're drawing a line in the sand. We've talked about this before with, like, speaking to everyone and speaking to no one. You can distinguish between the type of person that you're speaking to by giving them some sort of nomenclature, like we're talking about. So if you have a community, calling them your entrepreneurial mama or calling them Scramily. There's a really good example of Screw the 9 to 5, which was created by Josh and Jill. And they ultimately created this huge community around Screw the 9 to 5, getting away from the 9 to 5. And it had a very distinct brand voice and energy. And they called themselves the Scramily. And so you were either a part of the Scramily or not. You're either a part of the Smash Army or not. And it helps your audience distinguish whether they're in or whether they're out. The other thing that she's doing really well is having a storyline. Some of the background story that I gave you is super basic. It's got the boss, it's got Nicole, it's got the job and the brand. And all she's doing is trying to get to 500,000 followers. Otherwise, she gets fired. So there's some sort of thing that's at stake here. And she's created this story that has a very clear purpose and a very clear goal. And she repeats that consistently, often, in everything that she does. So creating some sort of storyline. And like you said, Joanna, I think it's important to point out that it's not necessarily that people are simple, but we learn through simple modalities. Marketing, they always say, speak in a fifth grade language. They always say speak in fifth grade language or speak in a really accessible way so that everyone can understand. So it meets everyone where they are. So I think having that storyline, whatever that is for you, but simplifying it down and distilling it into something very clear. Typically, there's a hero, there's some sort of villain, there's a challenge that they're going through, there's a goal or the end of the journey that they're working toward. I mean, if you think of our simple movie plots, of books, of fables, of the way that we've told stories for all time. They have these key elements, and she's done that really well. And she consistently hits them home over and over and over again.
And that's the key here, right? You're bringing people on a journey. And I think so many times people, when they try to get on social media, when they try to create a buzz for their brand, they think they have to have everything. They have to show this like perfect face. And actually, that's like the point of her challenge, right? Like she's saying, I don't have to have perfect, beautiful brand videos and really, really expensive tactics. The way I can get attention for this brand is by smashing cans, right? Like that is what she's making the claim, that you don't have to have this perfect curated thing. You just have to do something interesting, right? And I think a lot of times when people are talking about getting on to social media, promoting their brand, they're thinking, I can't do this until I have a videographer. I can't do this until I have editors to edit perfect videos. I can't do this until I finish my speaking course where I learn how to be a better public speaker. Those things are all good and important. I mean, I do those things for a living, right? So obviously I don't think those are bad, but it's not necessarily having this perfect thing that's going to make people pay attention. But having a goal, having a villain, having adversity, those are things that get attention. And one of the things when I was looking through her story and thinking about what she's doing, it made me think a little bit about Taylor Swift's marketing. And one thing Taylor Swift does so well is tell a story. And there is 100% without a doubt, there's Taylor Swift, the brand, and the story that's out there in the world of who she's dated and so much of what she's done is almost already like folk tales in some ways when you think about some of her things. And she clearly has done this intentionally. And she has villains in her public story, and like Kanye West, who has done some things to her, Kim Kardashian, who has done some negative things to her, Scooter Braun. Like she has villains. She creates songs, aka content, that talks about them, and then people consume them to figure out, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. Sometimes even in her stories, she's the villain, right? And she does this really well. And what she's putting out in the world and what is really happening might not always be, I'm sure aren't exactly the same, right? There's no way a billionaire, like she's a billionaire. Let's be honest. She's probably not doing some of the things she's saying in her songs, but to her fans, she's going on a hero's journey. Like her albums, her eras, these different characters coming in and out of her life, she's created a story that we're all following and in the world is paying attention to. It's not perfectly, it appears like it is not perfectly curated. It appears like we are watching her real life unfold in front of our eyes, right?
Just highlighting that storytelling piece is that when you look at the content on this account, it's not about the actual product. The product is an aspect of the story. You're not talking about the features, the benefits, what the drink does for you, how people consume it. All she's doing is smashing the can in every single video. And that's the goal and that's the focus. But it's gotten people around that smashing and then brings up the brand awareness and then does lead to, from what we've seen, sales of the product because now people are interested in purchasing it, not just to consume, but actually to smash it. So one of the things that she's also done super well is by getting people involved in the smashing. So it's not just her smashing the can, but it's getting fans to smash the can and submit submissions of how they're smashing can. So they had to buy that product in order to smash it in the first place. And, you can bring up the discussion of, oh, well, I want everyone to use my product how it's meant to be used. But when you're gaining this sort of momentum, likely what will happen is they will try the product and then the product has to continue to sell it. So if you get it into someone's hands, they like it, they enjoy it, they're likely going to purchase again. And then the lifetime value of that customer goes up. So just introducing it to them in a unique and interesting way is important here. And how she's done that by engaging her fandom, by engaging her Smash army to provide suggestions of how she smashes the cans, to smash the cans herself, and also getting them on board to root for her and take down Mike as the villain is such a big part of engagement. So looking through some of the comments, what you'll see often is commenting just to get more engagement, or I don't like Mike, down with Mike, or you should try this, or supporting her and saying, Mike, you should never fire her. Like, people are contributing to the conversation because they feel compelled to be a part of this goal, be a part of this mission, be a part of this movement, and then speak up about these different things. So how can you think about engaging people? How can you think about getting people on board, whether that is them creating content and contributing in some way that you collaborate with, include in, and work into your content? Or how do you engage them in the comment section and get them to talk about and talk with what it is that you're doing and encourage the algorithm to that sense? And also get them involved, maybe tagging other people or sharing or doing those types of things that help and support the reach of your content.
One of the things that I find happens when I work with certain creators and I talk about doing something simple like asking your audience to help with something, one of the fears I think people have is that no one will do it, right? So there's this fear that if I say I want people to submit photos of their dog for something. Let's just use that as an example. If we want to do that as a campaign, the creator might be like, you know what? I don't think anyone's going to give me any photos. And then it's going to be embarrassing that no one gave photos. We have two big thoughts on that. One is it's just like sales. If you do not ask, you're definitely getting a no, right? Like if you don't ask for that engagement, if you don't ask for that community, you're not going to have it. So you should try and come up with campaigns and ideas that involve your audience and get them involved. The other thing too is I think you were talking about the bandwagon effect. People are going to do what they see being modeled. And there can be a little bit of fake it till you make it need here. And what I mean by that, if you're asking people to smash cans like she did, and getting people to join that bandwagon of smashing cans, you might need to get some friends or some team members to do it and model what that looks like to do it. You don't have to say employee so-and-so submitted their video. You can just share the video, right? And get some people that people in your network to do that. One way I've done this in the past for clients, one of the big things on TikTok is comment replies, right? So if someone asks a question, you reply to that question with a video. And that's a great way to get engagement because you're talking directly to your audience. It's also really great because if that video does well, that video that's a comment reply also sometimes can do well. And if you want people to ask you questions in your comments, you can just have someone ask you that question so you can reply and start to actually model the behavior you want people to do. And that will get actual leads and actual followers to follow that behavior. So I think sometimes when you're trying this strategy, don't be afraid a little bit to fake it till you make it. Get people to get involved and do it. Then outsiders will see that happening and follow suit and join the bandwagon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think encouraging your groups. Now, we're not saying do following commenting chains. Have it try to be as organic as possible when you're looking to the type of person who's going to engage or share. But it is very helpful to try to encourage people in the beginning, especially if you have a small following, to get them on board and then grow with momentum over time. So, and know that a lot of people have done that and that it's okay.
Yeah, and thanks for clarifying. I just want to hit on this. I'm definitely not saying to go join a growth group. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people in your network, kind of getting them to help in that process first. The growth group stuff can go haywire. So, yeah.
So a couple other things that Nicole is doing really well is that as she paints herself this picture in the online space, we don't really know what this girl is like, but some of the things that she has put forward so that we can relate to her in a really, really accessible way and in a broad way is that she's an intern. She made that very clear from the beginning. And so at an entry level position, we don't see her as threatening. We don't see her as a C-suite level. She's not the owner of the company trying to do this. She's not in a position of power. And so a lot of us, especially on social media as consumers, are going to relate to her and say, I get this. I understand this. I see you. I can connect with where you are, and I want to help you and support you get further than that. So I think she's done that really well by just being a really relatable character. I think the other thing that she does really well, just as a human, as a content creator, is she is not afraid to be silly or ridiculous. If you watch some of the content that she's created, she's dressed up in costume. She's wearing ridiculous things. She often looks like a male character in the type of content that she's creating as she kind of facilitates very well-known scenes, some of which are Marvel characters, some of which are Twilight, Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, Michael Jackson. And so she'll dress up and isn't afraid to kind of make fun of herself for the entertainment of the audience. She doesn't do it in a way that is kind of like begrudgingly. So you know when someone's doing something silly or funny, but you know that they really don't embody that character, it's kind of a turn off. She doesn't really care what people think. And that lends to interesting, funny, and relatable content because we can all connect with not just the popularity of the types of content that she's recreating, but being that person that is silly or goofy or funny and respecting them.
I think sometimes we just way overcomplicate social media, right? Like we think we need to put this perfect persona, this very professional, especially if you take it to the course coach creator world, because in the consumer marketing world, I think it's a little easier to see these connections, right? It's it's fun, it's fresh, it's easy to see those connections. If you're coming on trying to be a brand, you're like, I've got to get my outfit, I've got to get my hair, I've got to get my makeup, I've got to get my background, I've got to have this like perfect me out in the world. And one thing I think about a lot, and we talk about authenticity online and things like that, you have to figure out how to connect why people are magnetized to you in real life and get that to work for you online, right? Like, why does someone want to be your friend? Why does someone have a conversation with you? Even why does someone want to work with you after a one-on-one discovery call? It's probably not because of the perfect hairdo. And it's probably because of something in your personality. And if you can figure out what that is and get that to translate in your content, that's going to be like your magic sauce. So I don't think me and Michelle aren't saying go make funny skit videos. We're not saying that. That's what's working for her. Like probably because she's probably funny. Like she probably goes to a party and makes friends and tells silly stories. Like, right, that probably happens in real life for her. And so when you think about trying to think about what is it that what makes people drawn to you in real life, that's what you need to get into your content.
That magnetic quality and energy that is unique to you. And I can attest to this, it's not easy. I've always felt like I translate really well in person, but when I started getting online on social media, every time I got in front of the camera, it felt like I was putting on a show. I was trying to be perfect, look a certain way. And quite honestly, I probably still do that to some degree because I haven't quite broken down the barrier to authenticity. But the more that you can tap into who you are and be okay showing up as that, the better, right? We'll give you one tactic or tip to try to work on this because it's something I'm working on doing as well, is that quantity will beat quality in this regard. The more frequently you can get in front of the camera and create content or write or script or film or make graphics, whatever it is that you find is your avenue of getting out in front of people and driving the traffic or creating your platform, your presence, your brand, The more you do it, the better you will hone in. Joanna and I have chatted about this, is that the more that we talk on this podcast, the more we're able to solidify our messaging and how we want to connect with people, because we're expressing ourselves on a consistent weekly basis. And it helps to be able to create, to be able to take action and get things out into the world. So try not to focus too much on strategy, going, into your hermit state and just reflecting and writing and thinking like, oh, what is it that makes me interesting and unique? It's okay to do that and have some time carved out for that. But realistically, you're not going to be able to really determine what that is unless you're out there in the world doing that. And one of the things that I think will help you realize what this is curiosity. Try to follow curiosity. If you're ever in a conversation with someone and they ask what you do and then you share it and they're like, oh, okay. And then they just move on in the conversation, there's not a lot of curiosity there. And so pay attention to that. If they ask, the way that you respond piques curiosity and they want to learn more, then you've hit some sort of interesting point with messaging, language, and how you're talking about what it is that you do in a unique and interesting way so that people want to continue to learn more, which is what you want in the online space. You want someone to see a piece of content and then go to your page and then check out your links and then see your programs and offers or get into your free stuff. It's about curiosity and kind of leading them down the customer journey and through the funnel in that way. So one thing that the Nicole intern does really well, she called her the Nicole intern, like the Facebook.
How old are we, the Facebook?
One thing that Nicole the intern does really well is pique curiosity. I see comments about people, and I've done this, is that you see a post and then you're like, what the heck is this? I have to learn more. Then you watch another post, and then you watch another post, and then you watch another post. And even though a lot of the posts are the same, you become invested in the storyline, you become invested in the mission, the goal, and the movement that's happening there. So how can you create that curiosity in a piece of content that you're creating that then draws someone in to your larger presence and to your larger brand?
100%, right? Like drawing people in, getting them to watch more, look more, dig deeper into your product, into your offering, in what you have to offer. And I think what's important to note here, if you're listening and your wheels are spinning, like, how can I apply this to my business? How can I create something that's going to pique people's interest, make them want to go deeper with me? One thing to keep in mind is that you do need to create a story that's going to find you your ideal clients, right? So this is a large consumer brand, or trying to be a large consumer brand, something that most people can partake in, purchase. At the same time, the non-alcoholic beverage market, you could probably talk all day about this, Michelle, you know way more about this than me. There is a particular audience. The question I would have if I was their marketing consultant or on their team is, how is this translating into sales, right? She's proven, at least from what we can see, we don't know all the details, but from we can see, it's proven that this strategy works to grow an audience. But does this strategy work to grow a paying audience? That's the interesting question, and the question you need to answer for yourself. I could start some sort of journey of me, I don't know, trying to do something every day, walk every day for a year. I don't know. That's a bad story. But say I started that story and did that and cataloging it, showing what I did in that process in my journey, walking every day. That's not necessarily going to be the story that captures my ideal audience of people I want to work with. What's really interesting when you brought this up to me, Michelle, I thought it was interesting because Brandon, my business partner, he's starting a new Instagram account where he's showing his journey of building a 30K a month digital business, right? So he's actually starting an account with a really similar strategy of this. And the goal will be to help us sell our digital products that we're working on and selling those products. And again, it's that same strategy. The content he's making isn't directly about the digital products. The content is about the journey, right? The journey he's on to create this new portion of our business, right? this new revenue stream for us. And he's going to be talking about the strategies, the tactics, the things he's doing to grow that business and just sharing that story. That's going to find entrepreneurs, and our ideal client is entrepreneurs. So when you're picking your journey to be on, you have to think about, is watching this journey, and this is the hard part, is watching this journey going to attract the people that I want to work with, and not making it your product, right? Not making it a sales pitch for your product. How do you put those two things together? Maybe you're a health and wellness coach, right? And you're doing you sell a membership or products that helps with fitness habits. So you going on your own personal health journey will likely attract people who want to go on a personal health journey, saying, I'm challenging myself to get so many steps a day or to do this many minutes of workout a day. And having people follow you on that journey could be a way to find those right people.
Choosing the right storyline, choosing the right challenge, choosing the thing that's going to connect with people in the same industry, the same niche that you're actually looking to focus on. Very important. One thing that sticks out to me is that I've been seeing a lot that people love to buy things. They just don't like to be sold to. So people have no problem purchasing, whipping out their credit card, buying stuff. Like, we want to buy stuff. We are consumers at heart, especially here in America. And so we want to buy things. We just don't like being sold to. So the more that you can include someone in an interesting and unique way without just selling to them and saying, hey, buy this can or buy this product, that's what's going to get people on board. And that's what's going to share more organically with that you're doing. A well-known creator, Ali Abdaal, does this very well. If you actually watch his content on YouTube and all of his platforms, it's all about productivity and focus and studying and living a good life and kind of health and wellness, a lot of mindset. But he sells products about building a YouTube presence and platform. He doesn't create content typically around that. He's created an entire brand and identity around productivity and being this guru in the productivity space and the mindset and kind of business space now. But ultimately, he doesn't talk about or sell his products, yet he did a $4 million launch last year. So it is interesting to kind of watch how you can translate certain things. And I do think the way that you and Brandon are approaching this new account, it's very meta, right? Like, you're talking about what it is that you're doing, which will then draw people in. And the thing that they say about only needing to be a few steps ahead of the person that you're working with is true, because they're going to very much be attracted to the fact that you're closer to them in working together. There's a really great case study on this in elementary school, where third graders learn better from fifth graders than they did than seventh graders. Thinking to that is that there are certain people, certain mentors, certain coaches, certain influencers, content creators who are further along than you that you're not necessarily going to relate to. So when you're thinking about your own brand, your own business, it's okay that you're not so far along, because the people who are just coming up behind you are going to relate to and connect with where you are, as opposed to being so far ahead that they can't connect to and relate to it all, so they'll never buy from you. Something to keep in mind. Next tactic that I want to talk about is partnering with other accounts. Now, I know she didn't rely on this heavily because she did a lot of her own content creation and organic content creation, but she just recently put out a video with Gary Vee. So the more that you grow, the more that you are being successful, you can leverage that and connect with other influencers, other accounts, and collaborate and do it in a way that is aligned to your brand, aligned to their brand, but gets out in front of more people and generates more conversation, more buzz around what it is that you're doing in your brand or business.
You talked about this recently on your Instagram account, Michelle, about you called it something, authority borrowing. Like, if you're in a video with Gary Vee, people pay attention, right? You can take that same concept of just looking for people who are a few steps ahead of you, right? Even just collaborating with other people brings on collaborations. So if you're getting started on Instagram and you have 100 followers, you can work with someone who has 200 followers and start to collaborate and borrow from their people. Then your 100 followers and their 200 followers are 300 followers, right? And then you can kind of work your way to larger and larger creators and kind of borrow from their authority and borrow from their credibility and have those connections. That's worked for me in my business, not in a social world, but like behind the scenes getting clients. The bigger bigger clients you have, the bigger clients you can get. Because someone says, "Oh, that person has a big business. They worked with you. Then I can definitely work with you and I'm in good hands," right? And you kind of have to work your way to getting that authority. But borrowing authority is huge. And I think a lot of people in this space are so scared of competitors, right? They don't want to work with someone who does something similar to them because they're afraid that takes away from their business. But a lot of times people offer different flavors of things, different offerings. And this is why we've talked about this before, why it's actually really important to get specific with your offerings, because then the people in your space can be assets to you, right? If they only work with one type of client and you only work with one type of client. As an example, we don't do ads really right now. I don't run ads for people. So if someone runs ads, I can refer them. And even if we have some overlapping offers, we can actually work together. And when we find someone that's not quite the right fit, pass them back and forth because I know I trust them and they're good. And so if you start to see your competitors as real collaborators, you can really benefit from that and kind of borrow from each other's authority.
The longer I am in this space, the more that I feel like there really are no competitors. Like, yes, if you're looking at an analysis from a business perspective, you have competitors that you need to think about in terms of pricing, in terms of product positioning, how you can differentiate, what's your unique selling proposition. But leveraging competition or leveraging that is very powerful. And when you see it as the rising tide raises all boats, I nailed that idiom. When you see it that way, it changes the way that you create, and then you don't have to think from a lack mindset or a scarcity mindset, which is where competition is coming from. Of course, not healthy competition in terms of wanting to strive to be better and improve. I mean, I think Nike was founded with the intention and the mission of actually being better than Adidas. That's healthy competition, right? That's kind of like, okay, how can we uplift things? But not seeing competitors as, oh, they're going to steal clients from me, or I can't share my audience with them because they're going to go elsewhere. Realistically, if a client is looking for something, they're typically going to purchase it in multiple places. So people aren't typically going to drink one type of beverage. They're not typically going to get one type of fitness product. They're not typically going to get one coach over their course of their entire lives. I can't even tell you how many entrepreneurship, marketing, business courses I've invested in. And even though technically the mentors that I have invested in are competitors in the space, I bought from both of them. Rethinking the way you think about competition in your industry, in your niche, and especially within the online space, and seeing how you can collaborate instead to lift everyone. One of the things that I've said already about how Nicole the intern has done so well with growing her presence and actually getting people to learn about this brand, but I want to repeat it, is that she doesn't focus on the features of the product at all. She doesn't say, this is a can of mocktail. She just demonstrates the can being smashed. So a lot of times, if we're trying to sell something, if we're in the creator economy and selling education of some kind, we often focus on the features too heavily. So instead of talking about the benefits, instead of building a movement, instead of creating a community, instead of sharing our story, we're talking about how many modules are in the course, or how many calls someone gets, or what it includes, the features of what it is that you're trying to sell. And if those things aren't distinguishing you from competitors, like, for example, we have To Be Honest Beverage Company, the non-alcoholic hemp-infused spirit alternative. Now, the fact that it is CBD infused, which is a feature of the product, does distinguish it from other spirits on the market. So it is good to talk about. But I don't talk about the fact that it's in a glass bottle or that it has a cork, right? Because those aren't unique things to the products that are going to sell it well. So thinking for yourself, how are you talking about the features of what it is that you do? And how can you shift that to be more the benefit, the outcome, the story, the transformation, and that relatable community connection piece, other than just the features of what it is that you're selling, the products that you're creating or delivering?
You can think about this in a couple of ways, right? There's a really good method of show, not tell marketing. So you can show your product, like if you're with your company, you can show your product being used, which you do. You can show what you can do with the product, which you can do. That's very different than saying, these are the calories, this is the bottle, there's a screw top, it's a cork, right? That's not the same thing as just, you can have a video showing the bottle and taking, is it a cork?
It's a cork.
So you can, if you want people to know that it's in a glass bottle and there's a cork, saying, oh, it's in a glass bottle and a cork is nowhere near as compelling as just showing the bottle and taking out the cork, right? And again, I think we just start to overcomplicate. I need the perfect words and the perfect copy and all the things. You can show it. And if you have an offer and you're thinking, well, I'm a coach, so I help people gain confidence in speaking. I help people become better public speakers, right? You're not selling your 10 modules, your video lessons, and your assessments. You're selling better speaking. So how do you show that? You can show your clients before and afters with permission, right? You can share stories of people's improvements. You can go on your own improvement journey and show that improvement journey. And then the course sells itself. Then you get people saying, how did you do that? Like, how did you do this? I think I've shared this example before, but there's a woman that does color analysis on TikTok. And like, I'm like on a color analysis rabbit hole. But she just shows before and after of her clients and tells their stories. This is them before. She's not going on there by my color analysis. She's saying, this is a client I worked with. This is how she was dressed. She thought she was this color season. I went through my process with her. This is what I did. And now look at her now. Doesn't she look so much better? And you're like, wow, she does look better. I need to look better. I need your service, right? She doesn't have to tell you she has a service directly. She's just sharing a story, which I think is so key here.
It's powerful and people connect with that. It's more interesting. It's more engaging. We're going to pay attention for longer. And again, attention is currency. So how can you capture that? The last thing that I want to do is just kind of go quickly through some of the actual strategies that she's using with her videos. So we've talked a lot about themes. We've talked a lot about overarching strategy. We've talked a lot about the stringing together of different concepts, the hero, the villain, about movement, about impact, about creating an identity, around creating the Smash Army, all of those things. And so I want to go through and just hit a couple of tactical things in which she's doing to create her content before we get into a wrap-up discussion about the ethics of how this account is presenting itself to the community and where we kind of fall or think about those things. She is creating very funny content. I will say funny content outperforms any other type of content from what I've seen in terms of the data when it comes to marketing. When you look at major brands who have successfully launched social campaigns, the predominant amount of them are funny. Think of the Old Spice commercials that launched some time ago. I don't remember when, but it was like the guy, he's on a horse and he moves from each of the things. Funny, interesting. If you look at the bidet company, Tushy, very crass, but funny. Poo-Pourri and how they came out and just became this like, oh my gosh, international, impressive, I don't know where they're at in terms of revenue, but very successful. They came out with that commercial on social of the woman in the different settings, talking with that voice. If you haven't seen it yet, please look it up because it is so worth watching. So funny does attract attention, and people like to share funny content. So it becomes something that people want to pass on. Contagious. It's a book. If you haven't read it, read it. It's great information about why things go viral. All of her content on that front is entertaining. Audio and visual is on point. It's quick, it's to the point, and it captures someone's attention and it keeps someone's attention. So watch time is going to be very high on the types of content that she's creating. Repetition, even though she has the same goal of smashing the can, she does it differently every single time. But the text on screen, the caption, like a lot of that stuff, it's repetition. So it's telling people over and over and over again what it is that she's doing and how she's doing it and how she's going to accomplish it. So we think that we need to be unique and interesting with our language or our messaging or the types of content that we're creating, but the most successful creators repeat. And even if they tweak or change in some way, they're repeating a lot of their most successful and popular content pieces over time. And then she uses popular references. I mentioned them before, but Harry Potter, Marvel, Pirates of the Caribbean, Michael Jackson, things that people know and recognize in a really quick way. And so they can identify and say, oh, I've seen this movie, or I know this character, or I'm aware of this famous person. And so she uses that to capture people's attention as well as using lots of Instagram features. So she doesn't just create the same type of reel every single time. There are different images, different ways that she's sharing photos, different ways she's using the text to talk and the audio as well. Noticing that she actually doesn't have any reels, I don't think, with her own voice, which I think is really interesting. Again, she's not in the education space and she's not trying to build trust or authority with her brand. And so Joanna and I would think probably very differently for you. If you are building your presence as a practitioner, obviously we would want you talking in some way, in the way. And then she's really short and to the point captions. So she's not going on, she's not telling this long story. She's allowing the audio, the visual to speak for itself, text on screen, and then a really short, succinct, to the point caption so that people don't have to read everything or feel like they skip over because it's too long. So those are just some things that I noticed about what she's actually doing when it comes to the content that she's posting that I think appeal to a much larger audience. Again, does it speak to your ideal client? Not always, not necessarily. And so keeping in mind that as a smaller business with a smaller audience and presence, we can use different tactics that can help us connect better or lead to a sale or convert over time. But these are some things that she's doing to increase reach, encourage engagement, and really just like get as many people on board as possible in a short period of time.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about, I think all of the things you shared about the features, or at least most of them, is that a lot of those things have to be done in app, right? Which means the person creating the content has to be playing a very big role in that content rollout. And I think one of the things that we do as creators is like, we want to make it easy. I want to be able to schedule everything out. I want to be able to do that. But it's painfully obvious, I think, when a creator is just scheduling out content and not actually like engaging. And so when you're doing text to speech inside the app and you're using sounds that are trending inside the app, it makes the account, whether or not she's got an assistant or something helping her, we don't know, but like it makes the account feel very organic and homegrown. Like there is a person behind it, not a brand. And if you remember back in our 2024 ins and outs, one of the things that I said was kind of out was a typical brand account. And one of the things that was in was like a true founder creator account. So something coming from and organically coming from a human being. And of course, you can get help with that. You can find a way to make it feel organic and get help with that. But it's very different than just like posting on a schedule content that can be posted everywhere on every channel at every time. One thing I highly recommend when people are getting started on social media is to only pick one or two channels. Because if they're trying to post everywhere, it's really hard to be native and organic and engaging on every single app. If you're trying to be in like 17 places, it's really tempting to just like put the same shit everywhere, right? Not that content can't be reposted in others, that there's nothing wrong with that at all, like posting the same content in multiple places, but you need to use the apps like a human, like a real person just posting for their friends might use, so that way it feels like it's a true person they're engaging with and not an intern, which is funny because they used that, right? They're like, I'm the social media intern. Let me be the account. Let me be the person. I'm doing it anyway. I could do it for you, the founder, and make you the face of this, but people will know it's not you. So make it me, right? And people connected with that.
And I just want to say that I don't think that Nicole or the boss Mike or the brand ever thought that this type of growth was going to be a part of the story. Like, if you look back at where she started, she's just smashing cans with a baseball bat, but it grew and evolved from there. So I think an important thing to learn with that is that it's okay to evolve and grow over time. No matter where you are now or where you got started, you can shift, you can change, you can always bring on new strategies, you can try things out. Don't feel like you've been pigeonholed into one type of content or one way of being or one voice. You can always transform and grow with time. Try out new things, put yourself out there in unique and interesting ways, and kind of, this is something that I'm working on as well, is like let go of some of the seriousness of it, because I have spent so much time in the strategy and the planning and with what you're saying, Joanna, in terms of like it looks prepped and it looks too polished. Like, we're not in a world of polished anymore. We're in a world of like scrappy, down and dirty. So on one hand, yes, like focus on good lighting, good audio as a business and as a practitioner, but also just like sometimes you just got to get stuff out there. And I find that the more intimate, the more heartfelt, the more not as planned content can do very well, rather than very scripted, overly coordinated, and like you're worrying about every single little piece. I think those are some really good things to kind of take away from our conversation today.
The one thing that I do want to bring up, because when I first saw the story, I was like thinking about it from like, yeah, like from an ethical standpoint. So chances are she was not going to get fired if she didn't hit that follower account. She created sort of a made up situation that is likely untrue to get attention. And I've always been like a very honest person, and my journey with marketing has been tough because of that. I've always kind of been like, everything has to be completely factual all of the time, or if it's not true. And I actually remember it was about a year ago, I managed to go to this lunch with a bunch of like YouTube creators and influencers, and it was a really bizarre experience because everybody's like photographing. It was like weird. I was like, okay, I'm out of my league here in terms of content creation. But one thing that I noticed is, well, because I hung out with them for a couple of days, what was happening in real life and what was being shown online were not the same thing. And it wasn't that there was any true lying. It just wasn't exactly the same, right, of what was happening. And I think sometimes when you watch content, you think, oh, this is so spur of the moment. This is all off the cuff. Like, no, people are taking things from their real life and curating them to a story that makes sense to the public. And I think when you're doing that, that's okay. I don't have to be posting exactly when things happen. If the journey of my story is a little bit different, I think ethically it's okay to change the story a little bit to make it make sense, to make it consumable, to make it work for the public, right? Obviously, she's not going to get fired if she doesn't hit the followers. That doesn't actually make sense, but she's telling a story that's funny. If she didn't hit the followers, they'd probably figure out a way to make the story make sense. Oh, you only got 300,000. That's okay. We're going to keep going, right? You're going to tell that story, and that's okay. And, telling things slightly out of order. I think when we get into trouble is false claims, right? Like if you're saying you helped a client have a 50K launch and you didn't, I think that's a problem. Like that's an ethical problem. You're saying I've done this for a client when that's not true. When you're saying you've worked with people you haven't, when you're making up testimonials, when you're doing things like that, that's a problem. But if you're kind of creating a fake journey to go on, but you're kind of utilizing and curating real life claims and experiences, I think that's when that makes sense because you're using your real life, but organizing it in a way that's a story.
Yeah, definitely. I think that they're leaning very heavily into, again, Mike, the boss, as this like bad character who's going to fire her if she doesn't fulfill the 500K follower count. And they've kept updates on some of these things. And who knows if all of the storyline is completely true. But I think that as consumers, we have to be mindful of everything in brands and business has some sort of curation to it, because you're right. Like, we pretty much cannot reflect reality completely because we're always telling it secondhand. We're recounting it. We're sharing. I mean, think about reality television. Reality television isn't actually reality. It's very staged. You're going to be very different than if you have a full camera crew in your house all the time versus not. So I think as consumers, we have to continue to be mindful that the way that things are curated on social media, in television, movies, ads, billboards. I mean, this has been going on since marketing began, I guess, in my opinion. The way that things are airbrushed or edited or changed in terms of like physical bodies and what people are presenting, it's always going to be slightly distorted because from a marketing perspective, what are you trying to do? You're trying to sell the thing. And there are some blurred lines with what is ethical, what is real, and in just hitting certain numbers or trying to have certain levels of success as a company. In the online space, we have had a great episode on legal stuff, which you can go back and listen to with Olivia, that talked a little bit about some of those false claims. And I think we need to be more mindful of that, whether that's even as like a health practitioner, what you're saying you can help people accomplish, or whether you have the licensing or certifications in order to do so. As a business coach or consultant and as a marketer, any financial claims or reach claims as far as like follower count and things like that, like anything that you can put a metric to, I would be very mindful about or consult with a lawyer to decide what you can talk about, because the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is cracking down on the digital economy more than it ever has before, because it was kind of, I think, like a little bit more Wild Westy, where this is a new space, it's a new landscape, it's a new territory. And so we're just kind of putting things out there and marketing these things that aren't being highly regulated, and now they definitely are. So there are some cases out there of, companies, rightfully so, that are being cracked down on.
I had a different thing we have to talk about. Well, I don't know if we have to talk about it, but with what you're talking about, Stripe, the week we were filming, so it's June 5th, Stripe changed its terms and conditions, and certain creators and coaches who are making certain claims are losing access to their Stripe account. So I actually have to go read about Stripe terms and conditions because I utilize Stripe. I highly doubt we're doing anything that goes against their terms and conditions. But if you use Stripe, go read, because they made big changes, and it has to do with companies, coaches, creators, and the types of claims you're making if you're making unfounded claims. And that's actually why I think the story marketing is even more important, because you're not marketing on claims and features that could be unethical and problematic. If you market based on a story, if I market, I've been successful, see what I've done, I can help you too. I'm not saying I can help you get X result. I'm saying these are results I've gotten for others that are real results. If that interests you, come along. Let's see what we can do together. That's a very different marketing tactic.
As we head to wrap up this conversation, I hope that you've taken a lot away in terms of tactics, in terms of overarching themes, in terms of how you can bring these marketing practices into your business so that you can reach more people, engage audiences, really build a strong community and brand around what it is that you're doing, so that you can sustain in the long term and not just focus on just getting one viral video or trying to get out in front of a group of people and sell them quickly. Thinking more, what are the long-term strategies of how I can grow and sustain my business and my brand? Because brand holds weight. Your name, your likeness holds serious weight. And there can be repercussions to misusing that in the present if you're thinking about making this your career and planning on continuing this. So I hope that this was helpful today and you look up the best marketing strategy ever, connect with Nicole the intern online, and let us know your thoughts as well.
Thanks for tuning in. Find the link in the show notes to join us in the Her First Collective, a free Facebook group to discuss the podcast, ask questions of our guest experts, and network with a group of female entrepreneurs who value collaboration over competition.
Please subscribe, share, leave a review, and be sure to catch our next episode. What is one thing you can do today to prioritize you in business and life?